bags. Hey gang, I'm Dr. Who. This is Accounting is a Joke, where accounting makes sense so you can make dollars. Today we're going to take a look at a walkthrough exercise of how to properly fix things when we mess up, i.e. accounting for errors. But it's very critical, gang, that you already have a better understanding of how to properly journalize and record transactions. But don't fret, I dropped a link to a video that could get you up to speed in no time if you're not prepared. So without any further ado, let's get it. So it tells us Courtney Mahan has trouble keeping her debits and credits equal. During a recent month, Courtney made the following accounting errors. So we have 5 different errors that she did individually in terms of journalizing. Okay? And it says for each of the following errors, state whether the total debits equal the total credits on the trial balance. Gotcha. For each error, determine whether the total debits are greater than, equal, or less than. Okay, so as we know, gang, the process that we have to deal with accounting is 2 parts. It's the recording part and the reporting part, in that particular order. We record transactions into the journal. From the journal, we post them into the ledger. And then from the ledger, we go into the next part, which is considered the reporting phase, reporting our financial statements. But before we report our financial statements, we create a trial balance, gang. And the trial balance just simply lets us know if our debits or credits are equal. So this exercise is kind of further elaborating on top of that. So some of the things you must know: how to properly journalize for this particular problem, and understand what is reported on the trial balance in terms of the account's normal balances. When we talk about normal balances, we are talking about the side in which that particular account increased. And what I like to use to help us out with that is the all clear system. The all clear system tells us that any assets, withdrawals, which are also known as dividends, or expenses always increase on the debit side, which means that their normal balance is going to sit on the trial balance on the debit. In contrast, in the clear group, we have capital, which is stockholders' equity, liabilities, and revenues. Any of those particular accounts, when it's time for them to increase, it will sit on the credit side, which means that on the trial balance, that amount will be posted on the credit. And so based on these particular errors that was made, we will be able to decipher whether each side's on the trial balance equal, greater than, or less than the debits or the credits. So let's go to the first one. It tells us in preparing the trial balance, Courtney omitted $5,000 notes payable. The debit to cash was correct. Okay, gang, so let's think about this from a journal aspect, right? It's telling us that Courtney omitted the notes payable, but a debit to cash was correct. So obviously, she journalized the debit to cash, but she didn't credit the notes payable. So it's a partial journal entry. So how does that affect the trial balance currently? Well, since cash is correct and cash is an asset, it sits on the trial balance on its debit side. However, notes payable is a liability, gang, and we know that the normal balance of a notes payable is on the credit side. And so the fact that Courtney omitted the notes payable, that means that that particular account on the trial balance is lower than what it should be. It's understated. Therefore, our trial balance is going to have a higher debit balance than it would the credit balance. Let's take a look. Check answer. Bags all day. Moving on. Okay. Courtney posted $1,000 utilities expense as $100. The credit to cash was correct. Okay, gang. Look at it from a journal entry aspect. She was supposed to debit utilities expense and credit cash for $1,000. Instead, she debited utilities expense for $100 and credited cash for $1,000. So a couple of things are happening, but let's first identify the utilities expense. Utilities expenses in the all game, which means that the normal balance of expenses are on the debit side. And the fact that she was supposed to record or increase utilities expense by $1,000, but she did it by $100 instead, that means that the utilities expense account is lower than what it should be. how much is it lower than what it should be by? $900, gang. How did I get the $900? Well, she increased it by $100, but she should have increased it by $1,000. So if we subtract the two, that tells us the difference in which it is short of or understated. So how does that affect the trial balance? Well, at that particular point in time, our debit side is lower than what it should be. What about cash? It is also in the all game, which means that it has a debit balance. Now, they said that cash was credited for the correct amount. So in terms of the cash account, it is correct on that particular trial balance. But yet and still, we know that that expense isn't. So therefore, our particular debit balance will be understated or lower than the credit balance on the trial balance. Let's take a look. Check the answer. Bags all day. Moving on. In recording a $600 payment on account, Courtney debited furniture instead of accounts payable. All right, gang. Now it's getting a little tricky. So let's see what's going on. It said that Courtney debited furniture instead of accounts payable, but she was supposed to record a collection on her account. So, what is the correct journal entry that she should have done? Recording a collection on her account, you're going to debit accounts payable, decreasing that liability, and credit cash, decreasing that asset as well. However, it said instead of her debiting accounts payable or lowering the liability, she increased her asset furniture instead. So think about that, gang. She increased the asset furniture instead. So in terms of her assets, particularly furniture on the trial balance, it's going to be higher than what it should be. And since it's an asset, her debit column will be higher than what it should be. What about that accounts payable? Well, since she refused to record the accounts payable, and in this particular journal entry, she was supposed to decrease it. Since she refused to decrease her accounts payable, that accounts payable will also be reported on the trial balance higher than what it should be. And since the accounts payable is a liability, that means that it's going to sit on the credit side. So that credit side balance of liabilities on the trial balance is going to be higher than what it should be. So in summation, gang, we have a debit balance from furniture on the trial balance that's higher than what it should be, and we also have a credit balance from accounts payable that's higher than what it should be, both by $600. So guess what, gang? Our trial balance is what? Equal. Still wrong, but yet equal. So we're going to check that answer. Bags all day. D tells us in journalizing a receipt of cash for service revenue, Courtney debited cash for $50 instead of the correct amount for $500. The credit was correct. All right, so what was she supposed to be doing? She provided a service and received cash. The correct journal entry would be a debit to cash, credit to service revenue. But her error was that instead of debited cash for $500, she forgot a zero, gang. She debited it for $50. So how does that affect our cash account on the trial balance? Well, clearly our cash account on the trial balance is understated. It should be higher than what it's currently reported at. Because cash is an asset, we already know that the normal balance on the trial balance is going to be on the debit side, which basically means that our debit side is understated, lower than what it currently should be on the trial balance. Check the answer. Well done, gang. E tells us Courtney recorded a 210 purchase of office supplies on account by debiting office supplies for $120 and crediting accounts payable for $120. Okay, gang, so what's going on with this one? She was supposed to record purchasing office supplies on account, which means she's going to debit office supplies and credit accounts payable. Basically, what she did was she increased her office supplies at an amount lower than what it should have been, as well as increasing her liability accounts payable at an amount lower than what it should be. So how does that affect the trial balance? Well, on the trial balance, the office supplies are understated as well as her liability accounts payable understated, both by $90. How did I get the $90, gang? She recorded 120 instead of 210, which means that if we subtract the two, that is the amount of each account being understated by. So, as we already know, office supplies is an asset, so the normal balance of that is going to be on the debit side, and accounts payable is a liability, so the normal balance of that is going to be on the credit side. Since they're both opposing sides that are understated by $90, the amount on the trial balance will be incorrectly equal. Check the answer. Good job, gang. We are almost through. Okay, so requirement 2 tells us to identify each account that has an incorrect balance and the amount of the direction of the error, such as accounts receivable, $500 too high. All right, gang. So back to A. What happened? Courtney omitted $5,000 of notes payable, but the cash was correct in the journal entry. So what account had the incorrect balance? Obviously our notes payable, and the amount was $5,000 because she forgot to record it. And the direction of the error? Well, if she forgot to record her notes payable and she was supposed to be crediting it, then that means that her notes payable right now is too low. Check the answer. Excellent. Moving on. Courtney posted a $1,000 utilities expense as $900. The credit to cash was correct. Okay, the only account that was affected in B again, gang, was utility expense. And what do we know about a utilities expense? Utilities expense was recorded at $100 instead of $1,000. Because it was a correct debit, meaning that we were supposed to increase utilities expense, our utilities expense is currently understated by the $900, which we mentioned earlier. And because we failed to debit our utilities expense, i.e. increase it, our current balance is too low. Check the answer. Excellent, gang. Moving on. In recording a $600 payment on account, Courtney debited furniture instead of accounts payable. Now, in this situation, we already know, gang, two accounts are affected, our furniture and our accounts payable. Now, she debited furniture incorrectly, which it didn't have no effect in this transaction. So, we understand that furniture is affected because it's being reported on the trial balance higher than what it should be. By how much? The amount she recorded, which was $600. So, too high. Now, what about the other account? She was supposed to debit accounts payable. Accounts payable is a liability, gang. Anytime you debit an accounts payable, you are decreasing it. And again, the amount that she was supposed to decrease it by was $600. But since she failed to decrease it by $600, we know on the trial balance, the current amount is higher than what it should be. Check the answer. Bags all day. Next, in journalizing a receipt for cash for service revenue, Courtney debited cash for $50 instead of $500. The credit was correct. So the only account in this one, gang, that was affected erroneously was cash. We recorded cash, we increased cash by debited by $50 instead of $500. So how does that affect the trial balance? Our cash account is understated, lower than what it should be. And by how much? The difference. So if we subtract 50 from 500, that will give us 450. So our cash is understated or too low by 450. Check the answer. Great job, gang. My spider sense is tingling. You guys are learning.
Yes, definitely.
And last but not least, Courtney recorded a $210 purchase of office supplies on account by debiting office supplies for $120 and credited accounts payable. Courtney made the correct journal entries, but she just had the incorrect amounts for each account. So when she was trying to increase office supplies for $210, she erroneously did it for $120, which is a $90 difference. And when she was supposed to increase accounts payable, she did the same, which was an additional $90 difference. So how does that affect the trial balance? Both her assets, office supplies, and her liabilities, accounts payable, are too low by $90. Check the answer. Great job, gang. Give yourself a round of applause because this problem was a doozy. So there you have it, gang. A very thorough problem on how to properly account for accounting errors. Hopefully you learned something from this video and that light bulb was clicking. If so, like, subscribe, and share the channel with your friends so they can chase the bags as well. As always, gang, I'm Dr. Who, and it's my humble pleasure to have you guys spend time with me, and I'll see you soon. Bags!